I want to get your thoughts on the customs union vote yesterday in the Lords. Does it make it more likely now that we see in the Commons a version of Brexit that looks more like what you propose around the customs union?
I think so. The scale of the defeat for the government was immense. It was huge. I didn't predict that scale. I thought there would be a majority of maybe 10, 15, 20 maximum, but the scale of the defeat was absolute. But also the number of ex-cabinet ministers who voted against the government. So I think it's going to force a rethink, both in terms of the House of Commons, but I'm hoping it will force a rethink in government immediately, so we can come to some compromise.
By your assessment, you think there are enough Tory rebels to now pass something that looks like your version of the customs union?
It's difficult to say, but whatever happens in the Commons, the Lords are going to continuously defeat this government until we get a sensible compromise. I think it was staggering last night, absolutely staggering. If I was Theresa May now, if I was Philip Hammond, I'd be saying, game's over, we've got to get a deal around a customs union, let's try working cross-party.
You grateful to the unelected House of Lords?
Yeah, of course. I don't believe in an unelected House of Lords. I'd rather they were elected. But I am convinced about a secondary chamber, though. I wasn't before, but I have been over this last few years. I think the idea of having an amending chamber is quite good. It means government has to think again. I'm hoping we get a rational discussion now from government.
Some people are joining the dots now between what has happened to one of Theresa May's red lines here in the House of Lords and her leadership. And then you could push that further and ask whether we end up in an election before the Brexit situation rolls on. Do you think we are getting closer to an election situation in the UK?
I'm up for a general election whenever it comes. I want to concentrate on this issue. I think what the government should do now is recognise the significance of the defeat, the scale of it, and come forward now with a proposal on a customs union that we can all work upon, because the idea of this becoming just party political knockabout is not in the interest of the country overall. We need our financial markets and our manufacturing base, people themselves need stability now.
And you've been here talking about this new deal and a new start, and part of that is to do with your relationship with the financial services sector. You say that you want this new deal, you want to work with long-term patient capital. I've heard you talk passionately about that subject many times. You want more investment, you want to rise together to the challenge. But then Jeremy Corbyn on online videos rails against Morgan Stanley. Do you forgive the financial services sector for being a little confused as to what you want from them right now?
I don't think they should be confused. I think we're reflecting the views of, well, the population. I think we're also reflecting the views of the majority within the finance sector as well, where we can't go back to complete deregulation. We can't go back to a system which actually did bring about the financial crash. But we've got to respect the role that finance plays. So what we're saying to the finance sector, here's an offer from us. We'll be completely straight with you. Here's what we're going to do. Some of it you'll like, some of it you'll dislike. We understand that. But we want you to come to government alongside us. We want you to sit alongside manufacturers, trade unions, other representatives of our society, and advise us on how we can achieve the sort of society we want.
So is this an olive branch? Does the Labour Party stop railing against bankers?
Well, we'll always call out. Well, interestingly enough, as some of our colleagues in the finance sector do, we'll always call out where we think there's iniquities. We'll always call out where we think that the finance sector is not playing the role it should. But we'll always be straight with people, and we've always said we want to ensure that we have a good working relationship with the financial sector. As I say, when we go into government, we want them alongside us.
When you go into Goldman Sachs and you have tea and biscuits, as we know you've done, and other banks, what feedback do you get on your proposals, which include nationalisation of parts of UK infrastructure and a whole load of other things that raise some eyebrows?
Right, the feedback I get is we're mostly on the same page when it comes to the need for long-term patient investment. That's the first thing. We're both on the same page about the role we want finance sector to play, and we're both on the same page where we respect there needs to be stable returns for that investment as well. So on all of those again. Where we've had some disagreements, and I can understand this. No one's going to be overjoyed if I say I'm going to increase your income tax to the top 5%. But when I explain just how little that is, people get reassured. Same with corporation tax. Interestingly enough, in terms of the public ownership we put forward, we've said about water. I have to say the Financial Times and others have been running campaigns about just how bad the water sector is in this country. Rail, well, if you look at the opinion polls and the people I talk to, on the opinion polls, they look at them the same as I, 70 or 80% for bringing rail back in. So we've said there's a range in which we think these public utilities need to be brought back. We've identified them. We're not saying we're going any further, but we're saying these are our plans. get used to it and help us in terms of how we implement that effectively.
You say you're not going any further, and you've told me before that you've got no trick up your sleeve, as the line you've used, John. Why do I keep reading research then from within the city that says the manifesto might be the tip of the iceberg? Is there a trust issue still between the Labour Party?
No, you're right. You're right, and that's why I'm meetings like today, and the meetings that I'm doing all the way across the city, are just say, look, this is what we're going to do. There's nothing up my sleeve. We'll be open and transparent. And in fact, if you don't believe us, why don't you work alongside us in developing our manifesto? I'd rather they came into the tent now and started working with us. In that way, they can get the reassurance, but also we can hone down our policies to make sure they're effective.
Do you understand the reticence, though, that some in the UK financial services industry have about... I mean, why would you invest in UK infrastructure right now if you think there might be a Labour government soon and you're worried about the property rights that would exist afterwards?
You'd invest because we've narrowly defined exactly what we're going to do when it comes to public ownership. Beyond that, that's it. That's in our manifesto in the last election, and it will be in our future one, and we'll be inviting people to work alongside us to implement those. Simple as that. So we'll set those parameters and we won't go beyond them. But also what we'll be saying to people, we're implementing what you've been telling us for the last few years, the need for long-term investment, the need to invest in our infrastructure, the need to invest in artificial intelligence and new technology for the fourth industry. We're doing exactly as you're asking of us, so just participate. In that way, you can be reassured. But if you don't have that confidence in it, isn't it better to come into our offices, sit down with us and help us develop those plans rather than just cart from the sidelines?
And I know you say you want to focus on this and not on whether there's going to be another election, John, but if we do see a leadership challenge to Theresa May, and I won't ask you to guess what's going on within the Conservative Party right now, you're ready? You're ready to jump? You think this could be this year, could be early next year?
I work on the basis that the Conservatives will cling on to office for as long as possible. But there's the difference. This is my worry. They're not in power. They're not in government. They're in office. They're clinging on to office. In Parliament at the moment, every day of the week, there's no votes. We're on one-line whips because there's no business going through Parliament. Government is in paralysis at the moment because the internal divisions within the Conservative Party that go all the way up to cabinet level. You cannot run a country on that basis. I'd rather we had a general election as soon as possible, but if it doesn't come, we'll work in the long term. If it comes soon, we're ready to hit the deck running. We've done exercise in preparing for government. We've included as many partners as we possibly can in that, and I want to extend that range to a wider range of partners within the finance sector, but we'll be ready whenever it comes.
You talked a bit about the Bank of England today, and I know you're waiting for more research on your future proposals for moving parts of the Bank of England to Birmingham. What about the leadership of the Bank of England? After Mark Carney, if you're in a position to be appointing a successor at some point, who would it be? What kind of person would you want to be in the Bank of England?
Let's be clear. We maintain the independence of the Bank of England. That's what we've said. We want to have a debate about the mandate of that bank, about how that can be, well, reflect the modern world, particularly about investment.
So you'd give them the mandate, but you would not be telling the Bank of England how to achieve that mandate?
No, not at all. We want to maintain the independence of the Bank of England. We want to have a debate about the mandate. But then what we want to do is set up what we've called a Strategic Investment Board, which would bring together the Treasury, the Bank of England, representatives from the finance sector and manufacturing and others, in which we then have a long-term plan about how we strategically invest our resources in this country. As for the appointment after Mark Carney, I have a good working relationship with Mark Carney and I have a great respect for him.
Do you meet him often?
Yes, I do on a regular basis, and we have a good discussion about what goes on. He's straight with me, we're straight with him. And as I say, in some respects, I've been one of his strongest defenders when he's come under attack elsewhere.
You haven't liked QE always, though.
No, that's true, but he's straight with us. I'd rather we have someone who professionally told us this is what I was right.
What does he criticise? What does he not like?
The Chatham House rules, so I won't betray. I'd like to be able to tell you, but I signed up with him to Chatham House rules. It will be confidential discussions. I think he's been excellent in his job. I've supported him throughout, and we need someone his calibre to replace him when he goes.
Somebody not from Goldman Sachs, though.
We'll see what candidates come forward.
We'll have to leave that for some time then. John, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time. John McDonnell, the UK Shadow Chancellor